Okay, so I want you guys to stop for a second and think of a mammal that's black and white. I'm just kidding, I don't mean to insult your intelligence. I know you already saw the thumbnail of the video that you clicked on. Unless you're currently binging one of my playlists. Anywho, although a lot of cool mammals come in this sweet Oreo colorway, such as the panda or the skunk, today we're talking about the world famous aquatic mammal, the killer whale. Hello, you sassy salamanders, and welcome back to another episode of my ART-CYCLOPEDIA, your one-stop shop for seeing some cool art and getting your face melted with some animal facts. And today, we have a very special subject, the killer whale. Otherwise known as orcas, the scientific name for the killer whale is Orcinus orca, the genus name Orcinus meaning kingdom of the dead, and the species name orca comes from the name Orcus, who was the god of the underworld in Italic and Roman mythology. So I'm just gonna go ahead and call them orcas from here on out. These creatures belong to the family Delphinidae, which basically means oceanic dolphin. And as such, even though orcas are called killer whales, they actually share more characteristics with dolphins than, say, blue or humpback whales. Orcas can weigh between 8,000 and 12,000 pounds for males, and anywhere between 3,000 to 6,000 pounds for females. And there's a size disparity to match. You see, males can grow up to about 30 feet long, whereas females typically grow to about 17 feet in length. Which 17 feet is still pretty large, that's about 3 times my height. Anywho, the anatomy of an orca can be seen on this diagram here, where we see all the common traits of an ocean mammal: powerful tail, blowhole leading to the lungs, and a massive dorsal fin. The most distinctive of these features, in my opinion, is of course the melon. I don't know who named it melon scientifically, but the organ is responsible for acting as a sound resonator. And this thing is used as an echolocator, which basically allows animals such as an orca to understand their positioning and be able to find prey. Other animals that have a melon include dolphins, narwhals, and one of my favorites, beluga whales.
Yeah, I have this thing called echolocation.
Now, the range and habitat of orcas is pretty impressive too, because it basically covers the entire world. Seriously, these whales can be found everywhere. However, for the most part, they like to stick to coastal regions over the deeper oceans. The most common places to spot orcas are Iceland, Norway, the coast of Argentina, and the western coasts of the US and Canada, from California to Alaska. The highest density locations for orcas is in the North Atlantic near the Norwegian coast, and for the Pacific Ocean, they like to congregate in the Aleutian Island chain, which is located in the south of the Bering Sea, you know, that little area in the Pacific that once connected Russia to the Americas. The reason orcas prefer coastal waters is because they're purely carnivorous animals with an expansive diet including fish, squid, seals, seabirds such as penguins, and other whales, even great white sharks. It has been documented by researchers that once a great white shark has come in close contact with orcas in a certain area and is lucky enough to live to see the next day, the great white will not return to the same feeding location for at least a year. They are truly some indiscriminate killers with no remorse for their prey and are the apex predator of their habitat. Orcas hunt in groups, and these groups are called pods, which we'll get into later in this video. But they basically take hunting to the next level because they have crazy high intelligence levels. How high? So high, it's perplexingly high. You know how the number of folds in the brain is a sign of the intelligence level of a certain species?
And if you don't know, now you know.
You know? Smooth brain species like koalas can barely process any cognitive function, and wrinkly brain species like ourselves end up having to do things like homework, and the adult version of that. Taxes. So, neuroscientists have actually identified an index for the wrinkly wrinkles of our brains called the Gyroencephalic Index, or GI for short. And in this index, we humans get the amazing rank of 2.2. However, orcas have an astronomically high GI ranking of 5.7. This means that orca brains have more than double the wrinkles of the average human, and actually, orcas have the record for the species with the wrinkliest brains on the planet. These creatures can process more information at any given moment than a human can. And granted, even though most of this is used for spatial processing in the open water, orcas can put those big brains to use to cause some serious damage on ocean wildlife.
Now that's a lot of damage!
For example, they've been able to identify that sharks are susceptible to tonic immobility when flipped upside down. So tonic immobility just means that a shark goes into a trance-like state when it goes upside down. This is because they rely on movement for most of their bodily functions. So orcas take turns swimming sharply at great whites to try to ram the shark into the flip position. Once the shark is flipped, they will take advantage and begin feasting on the shark's liver. Nothing else, just the liver. You see, one of the things that I noticed while researching orcas for this video is that they actually have a complete set of Pokemon moves. Bear with me, I can explain. Starting off with the first move, Bite, dub, very simple, gets the job done, hasn't needed to be changed in eternity. Now, the second move is actually a bit more surprising because orcas can actually use the move Surf. No, seriously, orcas have been observed using the force of their tails to create waves large enough to knock off seals off of ice patches. They work in a team, swimming parallel with each other to obtain the best result. The Pokemon moves don't just stop at Surf. Orcas have also apparently learned the move Body Slam, because these behemoths can actually propel themselves up to 15 feet out of the water. They have been observed absolutely slamming dolphins, and yes, indeed, they will eat dolphins as well. Like I mentioned earlier, they are indiscriminate killers. Rounding out the fourth move, we should totally add Iron Tail. Why? Because these terrible torpedoes have actually been observed yeeting seals into oblivion. If an orca catches a seal just right, it can actually launch the seal up to 80 feet in the air. The worst part about this is that researchers thoroughly don't know whether or not they do this to eat the seal, which means they can possibly just be launching seals to their death for fun. Which, personally, for me, is scarier than the necessity of actually having to eat the seal. Now, killing animals for fun is for sure a definitive trait that comes with an orca's intelligence levels, but there's also a lot more to unpack in orca behavior. As I mentioned earlier, orcas travel in groups called pods, and the pods have a well-established social structure. Each pod is its own little family with none other than the grandmother at the forefront of all hunting efforts. Yes, indeed, orcas are matriarchal, and these matriarchs can usually live to about 80 years old or even longer, whereas the males in the pods don't really make it past their mid-30s. Now, each orca is born into their pod, and they will usually spend their entire life with that respective pod, where they're able to communicate vocally with each other. Different pods have been observed to have different dialects, and pods that are in close proximity with each other are actually able to speak each other's dialects. Granted, these are screech noises, but it's still amazing nonetheless. When orca females reach about the age of 15, they venture out to meet males of neighboring pods to mate. Now, this is where things get interesting, because after mating, the female orca returns to her pod and the male returns to his respective pod as well. You see, this is how orcas are able to maintain a growing family without inbreeding. As a female orca ages, she will hit menopause at around the age of 40, which is a trait that is only shared with humans and a handful of other whale species. Scientists believe that female orcas go through menopause because of the fact that the family stays together forever. This is a behavior that's not observed in any other creatures. The younger females in the pod can have more babies, while grandma can focus on sharing her meals that she catches, as well as teaching the entire pod how to hunt and where the best food locations are. Thus, the survival of the pod relies predominantly on the performance of the matriarch. And different matriarchs teach different things to their pods. For example, not every pod of orcas likes to flip seals into the air. Some only persist on salmon, for example. Other orca pods have actually been documented tracking down entire pods of narwhals and massacring them. And it's this difference in learned behavior for orca pods all across the world that truly has scientists considering that orcas, regardless of the animals that they are, show perhaps the strongest signs of culture outside of humans. You see, we base the understanding of culture as something uniquely human, particularly with the use of language, and even though orcas can actually learn the definitions of certain English words, we can't really understand what their calls mean. We have a general idea. We know for certain that they express emotion, excitement, grief, and everything in between, yet there is still a lot to uncover about this majestic species. But what we do know now is that they are undisputedly the apex predator of the open water. Well, there you have it, party people. That's all I have on orcas for today. As usual, images for today's art are available on my Instagram, linked in the description. With that being said, I'm Brandon Camilo, and I'll see you on the next one. Love you. Bye.